This man has a special love affair with the toilet. Just because the beautiful boss just went to the toilet, so the water spurting out of the toilet into his mouth is also sweet. At that moment, the beautiful boss suddenly appeared behind him. He instantly started to beg for mercy on his knees, and made countless excuses to explain. It was Keitaro's first day at work and he didn't want to lose his job over it. A few hours ago, Keitaro was riding his bike to work when he was hit by a speeding sports car behind him. He fell into a pile of garbage and was in a terrible mess. Angry, he wanted to teach the driver a lesson. When he saw that the other party was a sexy and beautiful woman, his anger was instantly relieved. Not only did he not bother the other party, he also consciously cleaned up the garbage scattered all over the place. The pretty girl threw him 1,000,000 yen in compensation and then turned around and left. Keitaro was shocked that she was a rich woman, but he didn't take that kind of favor. He wanted to return the money to her, but she threw his hand away in disgust, and kindly reminded him not to wear headphones when riding a bike in the future, which is very dangerous. After saying that, she drove away at speed. He was a bit confused when he was given 1,000,000 yen by a beautiful woman early in the morning. He also took out his notebook and took notes, including the proportion of Beauty's body. Then he went to fix his bike. The old man who fixed the bike decided not to charge Keitaro because it was a minor problem. Just as Keitaro was leaving on his bike, Keitaro found that the old man was being bullied by some bullies. Watching the old man being bullied, Keitaro angrily walks up to them. However, the next moment, Keitaro turned into the alley, but instead of leaving, Keitaro hid in a corner and continued to take notes. He then came to the company to report. Today is his first day on the job. The company is full of sexy and beautiful women, and he is the only male in the company. This made him feel confident about the future of the company. What makes him even more excited is that the beautiful woman who hit him with her car this morning is actually the boss of the company. But before he had time to rejoice, he was arranged by the beautiful boss to wash the toilet. He had just arrived at the company on the first day without doing any work, and was assigned to wash the toilet. He was still quite aggrieved. It seems that he was hated by the beautiful boss because of the morning incident, but then he remembered that the beautiful boss was so beautiful, her body was so hot, and she drove such a nice sports car, such a beautiful woman to him as a wife. Shorten his life expectancy to 10 years he is willing to. At that moment, thinking about it, he even drooled, and even had bad thoughts about the toilet in front of him, because it had just been used by the beautiful boss. Keitaro put his hands on the toilet lid and could still feel the body heat left by the beautiful boss. He couldn't help but put his face on the toilet lid, and looked like he was enjoying it, but his hand accidentally pressed the switch and the toilet instantly spurted out water. He was enjoying the warm water when his boss suddenly appeared behind him. Keitaro kneels down and begs for mercy, saying that he was just testing the temperature of the water for his boss, and then makes up numerous excuses to ask her not to fire him. The beauty boss was obviously moved by his words and kept him. It was soon the day of the company exam. Keitaro looked at the software on the computer and was at a loss. He didn't even know a single software. This caused the beautiful girls laugh at him. At that moment, the beautiful boss was ready to fire him, but Keitaro suddenly shouted that he would take no pay. Just a chance to learn. When the boss heard him say he didn't want to be paid, he kept him. He started working hard on his knowledge and kept learning to use the software from the beautiful women around him. When the beautiful boss saw his seriousness, his attitude towards him changed a lot. Faced with the sexy body of the beautiful boss, Keitaro almost fell down when he was cleaning the glass. Keitaro also worked harder. That night Keitaro finished his work, and when he left, he found that the company's computer had not been turned off. To save electricity, he turned off all the power, and then thought about how the beautiful boss would praise him. But then the beauty boss saw the computer shut down and shouted angrily. It turns out Keitaro did the wrong thing with good intentions. All the information on the computer was not saved, and it was too late to recreate it as the transaction time was coming up. The angry boss tore up Keitaro's diary, and then she saw the contents of the notebook, which made her even more furious. The beautiful boss spat at him, but Keitaro swallowed it hard. Looking at Keitaro in front of him, the beautiful boss was disgusted. After Keitaro was kicked out, all beauties of the company stayed up late to catch up. The software was made in 3 months. How could it be done in 1 week? The beautiful boss was also desperate. Just then, Masuko seemed to find something. Isn't that the software the company was working on? The boss was so happy. She thought that someone had backed it up, but Masuko said it was the diskette Keitaro gave her this morning. The beautiful boss instantly felt that she had been tricked, and Keitaro must have backed it up in advance. He then unplugged the computer to cause panic, and then handed over the software when everyone was desperate, so everyone had to be grateful to him. It turns out that everything is premeditated by him, just to see everyone's jokes. The angry boss decided to go to Keitaro to settle the score, but just then they said that the software was not quite the same as what they had done before. Or even better, the software has a lot of interesting settings that even new users can master quickly. The company's beautiful women all appreciated the new software, and everyone couldn't help but wonder who made this software. Just then a cartoon character appeared on the computer screen, and they realized Keitaro had created it. The next moment a message from Keitaro appeared on the computer. He thanked everyone for taking care of him all this time. He really learned a lot, but he had to go. It was the only way to say goodbye to everyone. Everyone was amazed. Even the beautiful boss couldn't believe it. She realized Keitaro was a genius, so she rushed after him and tried to keep him, but when she got to the front of the office, she met the old man who had repaired the bike. They came all the way to say thank you. Keitaro lent them over 1,000,000 yen to save them from the gangsters' persecution. The beautiful boss realized that Keitaro was a man of high moral character who did not love money, and that her mistrust had deeply hurt his heart. She could no longer restrain her emotions and tried like crazy to get Keitaro back. But Keitaro had already embarked on a new journey. This 25-year-old genius will never let any woman stop him from moving forward. This sexy biker girl just showed a smile. Let a sight of Keitaro feel the feeling of love. This day Keitaro rides his bike on a mountain road. Suddenly a sexy figure rushed past him. Keitaro then found a shop to take a break from. He found the biker girl from before was also here. A pretty face, sharp eyes. Keitaro felt like he was in love once again, and just as Keitaro was about to strike up a conversation, the biker girl was already speeding away. Keitaro rushed to catch up with her, but how can a bicycle catch up with a motorcycle? In the end Keitaro did not catch up with her. With no other choice, he came to a new place to work. It was a big family. He worked here as a servant, but in this big family, the traditional rules are very important. Even a servant is extremely demanding. Keitaro, who was used to being a scatterbrained man, was very uncomfortable and was always reprimanded by the housekeeper. At that moment, Keitaro, who was sweeping the floor, suddenly noticed a beautiful woman walking in front of him. She is the daughter of this big family, Reiko. She was so graceful and beautiful in her manner and mannerisms. Just by looking at Keitaro, she made Keitaro feel like he was in love again. That night, Keitaro met Reiko with his dinner plate. Reiko just greeted him, and Keitaro was so charmed. He knocked over all the plates in his hand. He immediately admitted his mistake. But Reiko didn't scold him, but cared if he was hurt. Keitaro stared at Reiko's back with love in his heart. But there is still a penalty for wrongdoing. Keitaro was washing the toilet, and when he thought it was the toilet Reiko had used, he couldn't help but put his face on the lid again. At that moment, Reiko suddenly appeared behind him and didn't say anything, just looked at him and turned away. Reiko did not even give him a chance to explain. The housekeeper then found Keitaro and told him that he had been fired from his job. Despite Keitaro's pleas, he was eventually thrown out, but Keitaro wouldn't give up. His instincts told him that if he waited, he would find something. That day, Keitaro found Reiko alone in a cab. Keitaro rushed after her and followed Reiko to a factory. Here he discovered Reiko's secret. She was actually doing something blushing on a motorcycle. It turns out that Reiko was the same biker beauty from before. At that moment Reiko also saw Keitaro and told him that in her world motorcycles are all she has. She even considers motorcycles her boyfriend. Keitaro of course wants to correct Reiko's twisted mind, so they decided to have a competition. If Keitaro beats Reiko, Reiko will be Keitaro's girlfriend. This gave Keitaro a lot of confidence. The race started and at first they were neck and neck. That made Keitaro think he might actually win. But Reiko was just teasing him and accelerating so fast that Keitaro couldn't see the tail of her bike. How can a bicycle race with a motorcycle? Reiko thought Keitaro was an idiot. But Keitaro was no ordinary man, and he found a shortcut. But anyone in their right mind wouldn't want to go down that road. Keitaro was also a bit of a wimp, but when he thought that if he won, he could make Reiko his girlfriend, he took courage and rushed down. Keitaro was able to catch up without a hitch. On the other hand, Reiko had forgotten about the race with Keitaro. At this moment she was racing with a sports car and deliberately provoking it. The driver of the sports car was angry and decided to teach Reiko a lesson, so he increased the throttle to catch up with her. At that moment Keitaro also caught up. He took up the rope and hooked the sports car. The huge pulling force carried him madly forward. Now the scene is Reiko riding a motorcycle in front, the sports car in the middle of the chase, while Keitaro is flying around behind. Suddenly a raccoon appeared in the driveway and Reiko dodged it, but the sports car was not so lucky, being forced to stop directly, but Keitaro was thrown off due to inertia. Do you think Keitaro is dead? That is impossible, because Keitaro's faith is unstoppable by anyone. At sunset, Keitaro was riding his bike on top of the power lines. Reiko was stunned to see the scene, though she couldn't believe it, but Keitaro's chasing after him has inspired her to fight. She got serious too. Keitaro took his chance and jumped off the wire, into the trees and straight down the hill onto the track. The race was coming down to the wire. Keitaro overtook Reiko. Keitaro's inhuman performance surprised Reiko, but Reiko didn't give up either. Soon they came to the final right-angle corner. Reiko knew he couldn't turn the next corner at his current speed, but Keitaro did not slow down at all, as if he wanted to rush over the cliff under construction in front of him. Reiko couldn't believe how anyone would dare do that, but Keitaro's behavior makes her believe it, which arouses Reiko's competitive heart. She didn't slow down either, but when she reached the precipice, her instinct for survival forced her to brake. Keitaro, on the other hand, went for it without hesitation. Keitaro still failed. Reiko had never seen such a man before, and Keitaro's serious and persistent spirit won Reiko's heart, but there was no way he could survive a fall from such a high place. Just then, a figure burst out of the bush. It was Keitaro, who was still sprinting to the finish line. Reiko was finally attracted to Keitaro as a man. She knew she was deeply in love with Keitaro. She chased Keitaro on her motorcycle. At this moment, Keitaro rode his bicycle madly forward. Did Keitaro intend to give up the beautiful woman he had already chased? No, it was actually his bicycle brakes that failed. Keitaro set off on a new journey on his bicycle whose brakes had failed. Keitaro, a genius boy, won't stop because of women. Not long ago Keitaro rode his bike to a swimming pool. A figure caught his attention, with a graceful figure in short, sharp hair. Her eyes shimmered with wild radiance. This kind of wild beauty captivated Keitaro. It was as if he could see the African savanna behind her, and the woman was like a wild beast hidden within the human body, ready to break free at any moment. Keitaro followed the woman's footsteps into the swimming pool. He couldn't wait to see the woman in her swimsuit, but Keitaro's actions caught the woman's attention. In response to her questions, Keitaro lied about applying for a job as a swimming instructor. After a short exchange, Keitaro learned that her name was Apricot, and then followed her to the swimming pool. Keitaro changed his swimsuit and stood confidently on the diving platform of the pool. With a whistle, Keitaro jumped into the pool. With everyone watching, Keitaro drank a lot of water as he floated and sank in the pool. Keitaro's vigorous posture surprised everyone present. Finally Keitaro made it to the edge of the pool with all his might. He confidently asked everyone how his swimming skills were. The beauty at the side pulled out the enrollment brochure. Keitaro begged for a chance to work. He said he was willing to do odd jobs even, but no one paid him any attention. Frustrated, he loudly demanded to see the person in charge of the swimming pool, and at that moment, Apricot suddenly appeared. It turns out she was the head of the swimming pool, and she didn't agree to hire Keitaro, even if she had to clean the floor and cook. Although Keitaro used his best trick, begging for mercy on his knees, Apricot still did not agree, so Keitaro resorted to provocation. He said he only needed to study for a month to defeat Apricot, and that he would have a swimming duel with Apricot in a month's time. If he were kicked out now, such a person would not be qualified to teach others. Keitaro's words stirred Apricot's competitive heart. Let him go on and on. Keitaro then said he wanted to work here to learn. He could do it without pay. If he wins the competition in a month, he was hired as a swimming instructor. If he loses, he will work for them as a free handyman for a year. Apricot knew he was using provocation, but still agreed to it. But what Keitaro didn't know was that Apricot was an Olympic swimming champion, and so Keitaro stayed on. His job is to teach children about water and help them overcome their fears. Although Keitaro chose to work here because of Apricot, but these cute kids made him love the job. In his free time, Keitaro is also very active in learning how to swim, but there were also some accidents, such as vomiting from water sickness, playing with snot, and not being able to control their bowel movements. Soon Keitaro was mingling with children. His quirky behavior drew Apricot's attention. That day Keitaro dropped off the last student. He turned around and saw Apricot calling him. Keitaro was overjoyed and thought he was getting a compliment, but it turned out that she thought Keitaro's instruction was too childish. She also said that this is not a daycare center and that parents don't pay for their children to come here to play. Despite Keitaro's attempts to argue, Apricot didn't listen to him. Because of the difference in philosophy between the two sides, Keitaro directly said he would beat her in a month's time. Seeing Keitaro's confidence, Apricot couldn't say anything, so he turned around and left. The next day Apricot was strictly teaching the official team members. Looking at students' efforts to learn, Keitaro felt like they were trained dolphins and Apricot was a strict animal trainer. He couldn't resist the urge to be a masochist and desperately wished for Apricot to train him as well. It was easy to see from Apricot's contemptuous gaze that she didn't take the competition with Keitaro seriously, and even thought that his behavior was just an attempt to please her. But when she saw the change in Keitaro, she felt admiration from the bottom of her heart. Because a month ago Keitaro was a rookie who could not swim at all. Now he has adapted to the rhythm of swimming. At the end of practice, Keitaro was slightly tired, but Apricot asked Keitaro if he wanted to continue swimming. Keitaro expressed that even though he was tired, swimming now made him feel happy. This statement touched Apricot's heart, and she jumped down from above Keitaro's head. She then challenged Keitaro, telling him that if he could catch up with her, she would admit that he was a man. Keitaro swam confidently forward, but as he watched Apricot swim ahead of him, many beautiful images suddenly appeared in his mind. Keitaro's eyes suddenly widened and he felt that his body was full of energy, so he rushed up with more vigor. Apricot, however, suddenly slowed down. At this moment Keitaro suddenly rushed up. Apricot stopped with a shy face and praised Keitaro for her good swimming, but Apricot said she only used half her strength. Just then, she seemed to notice something. Keitaro followed her gaze and looked down, saying awkwardly that it was your wildness that awakened my wildness. Apricot would not allow Keitaro to have such nasty thoughts in such a sacred place, so Keitaro was thrown out, standing slightly innocent in the cold wind. But thinking of the angry Apricot, Keitaro had no choice but to leave first. He planned to come back after the other party had calmed down. That day Apricot found more beginners to learn swimming, so she asked her colleague. Her colleague told her it was because of a slight change in teaching style. When they arrived at the pool, the children were playing in the water, and even those who hated swimming could easily dip their faces in the water. There were even children sleeping in the water. Looking at the children's happy faces, it reminded Apricot of the first time she swam with her dad. That's when she fell in love with swimming. She couldn't help but reflect on whether her previous approach was too rigid. She asked her colleague who had come up with such a great idea, and the answer was Keitaro, whom she had kicked out. At that moment, a mother and daughter approached Apricot to express their gratitude. The mother said her child had grown to love swimming. However, to Apricot's surprise, the child wanted to thank Keitaro above all. In that moment, Apricot knew that she had lost. Now, she desperately wants to find Keitaro again, but it's too late. As Keitaro has already embarked on another journey, there are countless women waiting for him to redeem them. The girl was just a polite gesture, making Keitaro smile like a blooming flower. Little did Keitaro know that this innocent and lovely girl had already considered him as her prey to toy with. Keitaro arrived in the city of Kogane and successfully found work at the office of the mayoral election. The mayoral candidate, Katsuda, was a well-known local landlord, even having the local underworld under his control. It was the final sprint of the mayoral race, a time when money could influence even the smallest matters. At that moment, one of Katsuda's maids approached his wife, seeking leave because her son was running a fever. However, Katsuda's wife refused, citing her busyness. Keitaro, who happened to be passing by, offered to help. Subsequently, Keitaro ended up at Katsuda's house and started cleaning the toilets again. However, his real intention for taking this job was to catch a glimpse of the girl he encountered before. Suddenly, Keitaro found himself lost in thought as he stared at the toilet in front of him. Unable to control himself, he couldn't help but press his face against the toilet bowl. Suddenly, a scream caused Keitaro's head to plunge into the toilet. The girl's name was Naoko, Katsuda's daughter. Seeing Keitaro drenched, she took him to her bedroom. In Keitaro's heart, the girl in front of him was like an angel. However, as Keitaro surveyed the room, Naoko changed her clothes right in front of him, but Keitaro could see it all through the mirror. Little did Keitaro know that Naoko had planned it all along. wanting to see his reaction and derive pleasure from his embarrassment. With Naoko's further teasing, Keitaro, who was already at a critical point, had no choice but to escape. One day, as Naoko finished school, she coincidentally encountered Keitaro, who was working. Naoko apologized for what happened before and, seeing Keitaro's shy demeanor, decided to play another prank on him. This time, Keitaro wasn't as lucky as before. Because of the cleverness of the plan, the plot was going the way Naoko thought it would. Seeing Keitaro falling into the trap, Naoko sent him a love letter and shyly ran away. Keitaro opened the letter, in which Naoko asked him to come to her room in the evening as she had something important to tell him. That night, Keitaro arrived at Naoko's room as agreed. Naoko, with her calculated charm and unintentional displays of shyness, made Keitaro even more infatuated. He expected something to happen between them, but Naoko only asked him to help with math. Naive Keitaro didn't suspect anything and patiently tutored her. However, Naoko's mind was busy plotting how to manipulate him. While she pretended to seek academic assistance, her subtle hints revealed her true intention to toy with Keitaro. Keitaro also had to work at the office during the day, and at night, he secretly tutored Naoko's homework. Under such mental and physical torture, Keitaro felt that he could not take it anymore. One day, Naoko called Keitaro to her room, claiming she had something very important to show him. To his surprise, Naoko appeared in front of him wearing a bikini. She stated that she dressed like this to study with Keitaro, but he expressed concern about her catching a cold. The more composed Keitaro appeared, the more excited Naoko became. While tutoring, Naoko noticed a notebook behind Keitaro. She suspected it was filled with his fantasies about her. She decided to play her act again and stole Keitaro's notebook. That night, Naoko opened the notebook, only to be stunned by its contents. Everything about her was meticulously recorded. The notebook records that she is a girl who only pretends to be pure and innocent. Although she took pleasure in playing with men's hearts, deep down, she was a pitiful girl. The final note in the notebook stated that Keitaro wanted to redeem her with love. Naoko became furious. She decided to exact revenge on Keitaro. When Keitaro realized his notebook was missing, he searched every possible place, finally finding Naoko. However, she denied having it. At that moment, Naoko picked up a pair of scissors she had prepared in advance. In front of Keitaro, she deliberately destroyed her own clothes, then placed the scissors in his hands and started screaming loudly. Katsuda, who heard the sound, immediately rushed over with his subordinates. In that moment, Naoko felt a secret joy in her heart. She imagined witnessing Keitaro kneeling down, begging for mercy. Keitaro received a severe beating, but he never uttered a plea or exposed Naoko's deception. In Naoko's twisted mind, she believed that Keitaro had genuinely fallen in love with her. She crazily shielded Keitaro with her body. After the commotion subsided, Keitaro embarked on a new journey. However, on his way out, Naoko intercepted him. She returned his notebook, and promised to wait for Keitaro's return. She would be Keitaro's first gift. This is Keitaro's new job at a noodle shop. Due to the owner Aikawa injuring his arm recently, the responsibility of the shop has fallen onto Keitaro's shoulders. Though it's tough, with Aikawa's encouragement, Keitaro gradually starts to find joy in his work. However, due to Keitaro's lack of experience, he often receives complaints from customers. In such instances, Aikawa steps in to apologize on Keitaro's behalf, explaining that he is still young but has great potential, and requesting the customers to be understanding. Despite feeling discouraged at times, Keitaro doesn't give up. Whenever he feels down, a girl named Hanako appears by his side. Like a guiding light, she brings him a bouquet of flowers and offers words of encouragement. Hanako is Aikawa's daughter. With the encouragement he receives, Keitaro feels hopeful about the future. One day, a well-dressed man named Kimu visits the shop. He exudes an air of sophistication and reveals that his company is located nearby. He came to check on the injured Aikawa. Later, he invites Hanako to the pier to see the cruise ship where he conducts business. Hanako doesn't refuse, as she has developed a liking for Kimu. After Kimu leaves, Hanako follows him to express her gratitude. It turns out that Aikawa had been in a car accident, and Kimu happened to be passing by and took him to the hospital. On the agreed day, Hanako meets Kimu at the pier. Kimu expresses his love for Hanako. Though surprised, Hanako is unable to resist Kimu's advances. One evening, Keitaro comes out of the bathhouse and unexpectedly discovers Kimu embracing another woman. Curiosity gets the better of him, and he follows them. He realizes that Kimu and the woman are plotting something inside the car. It turns out that the woman was the one who hit Hanako's father with her car, and Kimu's rescue was part of their premeditated plan. Their real motive is to acquire Hanako's family noodle shop. Kimu boasts about having already kissed Hanako and claims that he will have her in less than a week. Once they are married, he plans to transfer the shop under his name, divorce Hanako, and marry the woman. Suddenly, Keitaro appears, questioning if what Kimu said is true. However, when Kimu angrily gets out of the car, Keitaro kneels on the ground, proclaiming that Hanako's family is good-hearted and pleading with Kimu to spare them, but he receives a brutal beating from Kimu instead. Hanako notices Keitaro's injuries, but kind-hearted Keitaro doesn't reveal the whole truth and simply says he tripped accidentally. Keitaro realizes that Hanako has fallen in love with Kimu, and he doesn't want her to be hurt. One day, Kimu invites Hanako to the racetrack to watch a race and brings up the topic of marriage. Hanako hesitates, but Kimu doesn't give her a chance to object. It turns out that today Keitaro saw Hanako going out on a date. He followed her secretly. He blocked all of Kimu's attack methods on behalf of Hanako. In the end, Kimu took away Keitaro's soul with a deep kiss. In the evening, Hanako asked Keitaro how long he planned to stay at the noodle shop. Keitaro mentioned that once the boss's injury healed, he might have to leave. However, Hanako expressed her hope that Keitaro would stay there indefinitely, so that she wouldn't have to worry about her parents being taken care of after she got married. Upon hearing Hanako's words, Keitaro was taken aback. He pleaded with Hanako to reconsider and made an offhand remark criticizing Kimu, which upset Hanako. Keitaro felt helpless at that moment. He didn't dare to tell Hanako about Kimu's true nature, as he feared it would cast a shadow over the innocent girl's heart. Driven to desperation, Keitaro sought out Kimu once again and begged him to spare kind-hearted Hanako. Meanwhile, Hanako, after realizing Keitaro was missing, went out to search for him but unexpectedly stumbled upon them. Kimu was mocking Keitaro at that moment. Just as Kimu was about to lay hands on Keitaro, Hanako suddenly appeared. However, Keitaro abruptly embraced the woman beside Kimu, and cheerfully introduced her as his girlfriend, but Hanako overheard their conversation. Keitaro intended to catch up with Hanako, but Kimu intercepted him, intending to teach him a lesson. To Kimu's surprise, Keitaro easily defeated him. Soon after, Aikawa's injury healed, making it Keitaro's last day at work. However, Keitaro was pleased to see that customers have grown fond of the noodles he prepares. Later, Keitaro went to bid farewell to Hanako in her room. Hanako welcomed him inside, expressing her gratitude and admitting that she had been deeply affected by recent events. However, she assured Keitaro that everything was now in the past. She then invited him to see the flower arrangements she had made, as she wanted to present her decorated flowers to someone she liked. But Keitaro chose to play dumb. He said he couldn't even tell a petunia from a neustoma. This made Hanako burst into laughter, but as she laughed, she cried. Keitaro bid farewell to Hanako's family and, under their watchful eyes, rode off on his bicycle. No woman can stop Keitaro from moving forward. On that day, Keitaro arrived at an animation studio for an internship. During the interview, the boss, Kosuka, used the excuse that Keitaro couldn't drive to reject him. Fortunately, his female co-worker, Saikana, came to his defense, allowing Keitaro to stay. However, he was only assigned menial tasks. While working there, Keitaro learned about the production process at Sururu Animation. First, the artists drew the original drafts on paper, and then other artists filled in the animation in between frames. Afterward, they added color to the Sururu celluloid sheets. Saikana was responsible for some post-production work, such as removing air bubbles from the Sururu sheets. Keitaro diligently documented the process of creating animation, but he couldn't help but check out Saikana's figure. Suddenly, a short-haired girl burst into the studio, accompanied by a man. It turned out they were investors, Enya, and the original manga author, Akechi. Upon hearing that Akechi was a famous artist, Keitaro excitedly approached him for an autograph, and he didn't refuse. They had come to inspect the animation details in progress. To speed up the progress, everyone decided to stay and live in the studio. Keitaro took on the responsibility of taking care of everyone's daily life. One day, as Saikana passed by the kitchen, she expressed concern about his excessive workload. At that moment, Keitaro's gaze shifted to the restroom, and without thinking, he found himself standing in front of the toilet. His body involuntarily started to stir. Just then, the studio owner, Kosuke, unexpectedly entered the restroom. Saikana, being thoughtful, tended to his wound. Enya, the investor, arrived at the studio once again to push for progress on the animation. Faced with Enya's scolding, Kosuke didn't dare to argue. Saikana brought coffee to entertain Enya, but she accidentally spilled it on her. In a split second, Keitaro reacted and grabbed a cloth to wipe off the coffee stains on her. This made Enya furious. If they didn't meet the deadline, they would face significant financial compensation. Kosuke urgently called for an emergency meeting with all the staff members. Suddenly, devastating news arrived. The supervisor responsible for overseeing the project was hospitalized due to a car accident. Everyone was disheartened and left the meeting room. Keitaro saw Saikana looking dejected and approached her, holding a cup of coffee. She blamed herself for causing the crisis by spilling the coffee. Encouraged by Keitaro, Saikana regained her confidence. The kind-hearted Keitaro decided to use his connections to help solve the problem. He called the beautiful boss and asked her to assist with part of the animation production. Then he arranged for Sticky to record Apricot's swimming movements. To boost everyone's morale, he invited Hanako to prepare lunch for the team. Afterwards, he brought Naoko and her classmates to do the voice acting. Finally, on the last day, they completed all the work, but they couldn't deliver the final product to the theater in time. However, Keitaro had prepared in advance. Reiko, the motorcycle girl, was waiting outside the door. She sped off with the animation, ensuring it arrived on time. As they all watched the animation in the theater, Keitaro, sitting in the audience, noticed that no one reacted. He was worried that it was his fault that the anime wasn't popular, so he quickly rode his bicycle away. However, after the movie ended, the audience erupted in enthusiastic applause. Even Enya, the investor, was pleased. At that moment, the projectionist rushed in, saying that Keitaro had gone missing. The angry women rushed out to find him, except for Saikana, who believed that fate would bring them together again. But the genius boy, Keitaro, would not stay for any one woman, and thus, the play concludes. So, which female character did you like the most?